In the beginning of 2024, the Apollo Justice trilogy released for modern platforms. Smartphone ports were made in 2016, but this was the first time that Apollo Justice, along with its subsequent games Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice, will be available on major consoles. The improved graphics and features are nice, most notably for my purposes the story mode. Instead of actually playing the game, potentially stumbling on which piece of evidence to present when, I let the visual novel progress on its own while I lent it my voice. It's a great option for those who don't like the mystery element of the series, or would rather just not get stuck for any reason, and I greatly applaud its accessibility. You can turn the mode on and off at will, and even change how quickly the game advances dialogue. However, story mode robs a player of more than just the in-game achievements. The game will only examine and present whatever will advance the case forward, and much of the game's witty dialogue lies in little Easter eggs or incorrect choices. Furthermore, part of the fun, I think, is being confused and sometimes not knowing where to go. The latter criticism is exactly why I'm bringing up story mode now, as it drastically affects the flow of the Mason system. The Mason system, as Phoenix describes it, is a game that the jurists are to play, depicting Phoenix's evidence gathering over the past 7 years. The past is 4 locations, as is the present, but the present day locations are closed off at first. You're meant to piece things together yourself as you travel back and forth, to the point that the first listed location, the detention center, requires information from the present day. I believe there's a particular order in which you're meant to play through the segment, but story mode is a machine built for efficiency. For the sake of keeping you, the viewers, in a bit of suspense, and to emulate the gameplay experience, I intend to go over the segment in the order of someone playing for the first time, with a few exceptions. So, I will start by visiting the detention center. The use of the original game's music is a great touch to remind us all that Phoenix is, indeed, in the past, and that it's his game for now. Phoenix visits Valiant, and the two exchange words aimed at each other's self-proclaimed innocence. Valiant claims that his partner's disappearance is as good as a signed confession, and seems more interested in the fact that Magnifi's performance rights are due to be his, now that Zack is out of the picture. Phoenix presses Valiant not about the murder, but about why Magnifi sent out those letters. The trick up his sleeve? Ah ha 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 ha! Perhaps you do not know. Know what? A great magician never reveals his secrets. So what the hell are those? They're Psyche Locks. A parallel to Apollo's bracelet, Phoenix has a green Magatama, which allows him to, in effect, cross-examine witnesses during the investigation phase. There's not much time to explain though. Phoenix has an idea of what could have led to the troops' blackmail. He presents Magnifi's murder weapon, suggesting that it isn't the first time that someone was killed by its bullets. The quick draw shoot-'em was cancelled, with no public reason why. Did someone else fall victim to the troops' magic? And here's the genius of the Mason system. Phoenix doesn't have any proof. He can't proceed, but the player now has a lead. They need to search for someone else involved with the troop. Next is the defendant lobby. Phoenix is greeted by the bailiff, returning character Mike Meekins. He and Emma are both from Rise from the Ashes, though his goofy megahorn and raspy voice show that he was and is meant as comic relief. I'm a bit conflicted about their and Gumshoe's inclusion, to be honest. On the one hand, it's cool that Emma's personality has shifted as a result of her circumstances. She's more mature and sassy thanks to Phoenix's disbarment, and her extremely relatable inability to get the career she's wanted all her life. And it wouldn't matter much per se if Gumshoe and Meekins were replaced with new one-shot characters, especially with such short-lived appearances. But they didn't need to be brought back per se, and their inclusion reminds me of a problem I have with this game in general, which is a lack of characters. Minor spoilers, Meekins is the last person the game introduces, despite there being several more places to investigate. I am admittedly rather biased towards cases with lots of characters, like Turnabout Samurai and Rise from the Ashes though. The bailiff's Psyche Locks come from his embarrassment at what he saw, or rather didn't see. Zack Gramarye. He slips just enough for Phoenix to piece together that, instead of Zack, he saw Trucy in the defendant lobby. But how would he possibly confuse the two of them? They were wearing similar colored suits, but she is, for one, nowhere near as tall. But Trucy does have a way to make herself taller, doesn't she? Technically, Phoenix doesn't get this evidence until a bit later, but he explains that Trucy used her signature trick, the amazing Mr. Hat, to fool everyone. Zack fled the courtroom and turned to the corner, running to the closest defendant lobby. Meekins gave chase, and when he turned to the corner himself, he saw a tall, red-clad magician jazzing into the second lobby. But that red magician was Mr. Hat, being used by Trucy. Once Meekins followed her, Zack Gramarye escaped for real. So, just how did Phoenix know about Mr. Hat in the first place? Trucy told him, of course. 2 weeks after the trial, the two of them are talking in his office. She doesn't have any known family, but she's more than fine staying with Phoenix. She's written adorably well and gives the section some much needed levity. It's almost enough to make everyone forget that her father disappeared before everyone's eyes. Unsurprisingly, she is the one who suggested that the place be renamed to the Anything Agency, and shows off Mr. Hat as proof that she has magical talent. She also mentions that, along with her father, her mother has vanished too. She was also involved in Troop Grammary's performances until someone made a mistake, she says. That might sound a bit familiar if you're not using story mode, of course. She gives Phoenix a pendant containing a picture of her, named Thalassa, another lead, along with the key to Meekins' psyche locks from earlier. One more stop before the present. Phoenix enters Drew's studio, and unease sets in almost immediately, as if he's being watched. Drew makes the excuse that he had to take up forging due to his failures as a traditional artist, and it's unclear how sorry he actually is. Phoenix isn't satisfied with his apologies, and whether they're enough for you is up to each person. I like that a lot. It gives the story some depth and players are allowed to interpret the story just a bit differently. Phoenix brings up the forged diary page, and Drew mentions that he didn't actually copy the page per se. He was tasked with writing in the same way as Magnify, but his client didn't have the exact page he was to duplicate. Phoenix asks if he'd ever met the client, and psyche locks appear. Drew tries to distract him by exchanging words about what the heck psyche locks even are, but Phoenix is not amused. He doesn't know the client's name, but Phoenix is able to figure out what we already know. The real forger is Vera. Drew gives that the client came to the studio to talk with Vera, who was apparently happier than she had ever been. He also allows Phoenix to examine the desk, containing the fabled commemorative stamp and a gaudy bottle of nail polish. The stamp shows Zack and Valent, as well as a third, a very familiar lady. Asking Vera about the stamp gets her attention, and when Phoenix mentions the Grammarys, she lights up. Her sweetness is light in a similar manner to Trucy's, again breaking up this case's misery with her earnest excitement. She doesn't generally go outside at all, thanks to an incident where she was almost kidnapped, but she did show interest in going to a museum about the Grammarys. The notorious client gave her a good luck charm, which gave her the confidence to leave the studio. The client also sent her that stamp, as part of a letter her father received, and she framed the stamp because she thought it was a gift. About the second gift though, the good luck charm, she stays silent behind a pair of psyche locks. These will be tougher to crack than Drew's, and so the past stays in the past for now. To recap everything so far, Valent has asked Phoenix to provide evidence that someone was a victim of the quick draw shoot 'em, one of Troop Grammary's signature acts that was cancelled a few years ago. The bailiff during Zack's trial, Mike Meekins, has realized along with Phoenix that Trucy helped her father escape the court thanks to Mr. Hat. Trucy's father is missing, and it's revealed through a conversation with her that her mother Thalassa is gone as well. And, at Drew's studio, Phoenix has learned that Vera is the real forger, who obtained a mysterious good luck charm from the mysterious client. It's only the halfway point, and so much has been learned, with even more that will shock you. Kristoff leaves Phoenix with a few cold words. The tension between them is palpable, even in so few sentences. A not-so-mysterious man and... did we really need question marks for him too? Greet Phoenix. The Silver Dawned man wishes to play poker, which was established long ago as Phoenix's new pastime. Phoenix is surprised that he recognizes him, which he shouldn't be. Isn't Phoenix famous as a poker player now? Minor plot hole aside, Phoenix takes a while but eventually recognizes his guest as well. After 7 years, Zack Gramary has appeared. Much like his trial, we know what's about to happen, but before he dies, Phoenix takes this chance to ask him about everything we've covered thus far. This isn't the first time the two are set to have a game. Zack challenged Phoenix to play back then, and made his decision to have him as his attorney because of it. He notes that competition allows him to see a man's true face, their unmasked personality. Phoenix brings up Trucy and her ability to see people's thoughts, and Zack acknowledges that Trucy's power comes from her grandfather. However, when Phoenix asks him to elaborate, Zack laments that he had to leave his daughter, but says that he left because of what was at stake. He shows a familiar-looking diary page, signed by Magnify Gramary, giving Zack the right to perform his magic. Are you kidding me? Phoenix is as upset as I am. Zack had the actual torn-out page the whole time and never told Phoenix. He didn't really kill Magnify, did he? Zack is frankly an idiot. As I said before, this case is the polar opposite to Turnabout Serenade. Dumb ideas, masterfully written. Beyond all this truth-telling and continued secret hiding, he's brought Brushel, a notary, along with him to officially hand his performance rights to Trucy. Phoenix shows Thalassa's locket, but Zack refuses to talk. Brushel spills the beans though. Thalassa was Magnify's sole daughter. Zack turns the conversation back to poker. He's irrational to a fault, it seems, practically taunting Phoenix that he won't lose tonight. We know that he and Olga had planned on cheating together, but the context we now know about who he really was makes this frankly nonsensical. Another thing that makes only a bit of sense, to be brutal, is Zack's recognition of Kristoff. Should he recognize him? Yes, as Clavier Gavin. The two brothers look nearly identical, and Phoenix shouldn't be surprised that Zack remembers a Gavin. Clavier was presumably one of the last people he saw before vanishing. Does Zack happen to know Kristoff? Yes, but Phoenix shouldn't necessarily assume that he's even aware of Clavier's brother's existence. After 7 years of not seeing either one, it's just as likely that he mistook one for the other anyway. In fact, I even mixed up the brothers' names when I wrote at the beginning of this section of the script! However, Phoenix's leap in logic proves itself to be true, and the game progresses to the prison Kristoff's been holed up in for the past 6 months. The whiplash between the worst and best dialogue in this game continues as Kristoff and Phoenix meet in his cell. Both are uneasy and terse with each other, yet dance around their desired topics like two peacocks. Phoenix brings up Zack's name, and Kristoff denies that the man he killed was anything other than Shady Smith. Kristoff devilishly and delightfully parades that he killed Shady just because he's an evil guy. Kristoff and Phoenix remind each other of the Grammary trial, and both note that Kristoff was the only one who'd called for Phoenix's punishment to be lenient. The two have been friends, but neither has really trusted the other. On the one hand, I wish that this relationship could have been explored more, but on the other, you've probably noticed that a certain character has been all but left behind in this investigation. And then, one of the most harrowing moments in the series. Tell me why you did it. Persistent, aren't you? I came here because I remembered something. The night of our game, Zack Grammary mentioned your name, Gavin. Ah, that reminds me. I saw a familiar face as I entered this restaurant. He did not seem to notice me, however. Gavin, I believe was his name. After that, he was killed, and I asked you to help me. Because I remembered your kindness back when everyone else had turned on me. I seem to be in a bit of trouble. Something like that. Dead. Someone hit him hard. Me? Please. The cops should be here any minute. I'm in your hands, should it come to that. I have to know. Why did you kill Shady Smith? No. Zack Grammary. Whoa. I've never seen Cyclops like these. Dark, cold, full of despair. Can I even unlock these things? I appreciate that the player is forced to activate the sequence, even if it's clear you'll never break them. The nail bottle appearing afterward is so subtle, and yet when it appears it ought to immediately catch your eye. On that note, it's time to use that bottle of nail polish and unlock the rest of the past. Vera's good luck charm, of course, is the bottle of nail polish on her desk, and Kristoff Gavin was the person who gave it to her. It's elegant. It's crafted so perfectly. It's a twist that the player gets to figure out, rather than being told. It comes out of nowhere, but is executed unbelievably well. Vera doesn't even admit to it. Phoenix already knows. We know. Vera elaborates and says that he might be the devil. More specifically, she claims that she saw the devil's face when they talked, but doesn't remember the details. She sees the sadness in Phoenix's eyes. Anti-spoiler, no, she's not part of the Grammary bloodline. I don't think that would have been a good idea, but these bits of dialogue do set up something fun for the final trial. More on that when it comes. Phoenix has amassed enough information to take on Valance locks too. The quick draw shoot 'em took someone's life, and we ought to have a strong idea of whose that would be now. Trucy's mother has been missing for a while now, and she was part of their performances. Even still, so what if Zack's wife died? That's Zack's problem. So, what if she wasn't just Zack's wife? She was also Magnifi's only daughter. The fragile glass of showmanship was pierced, and a rift swelled between them. Valance admits that she was the victim of an accident. They were practicing the trick, both Zack and himself firing at her, when a bullet flew through Thalas's body. Neither know whose bullet took her life, but both were subject to the whims of their mentor as a result. Valance strikes that Magnifi's actions were themselves immortal, but no more information is given that could lead Phoenix to deduce his killer. Valance does, however, allude to Spark Brushel's appearance, giving Phoenix the idea to discuss matters with him in the present. A quick detour first, to the Sunshine Coliseum. Phoenix wants to speak to Valance, but the Yellow Magician is not interested. In fact, he's had to talk and talk to a press that's become more and more suspicious of him, caring less about his magic than his potential murder. So, of course, Phoenix and Spark are on the same page at least. The two know there's more to the story than even I've said. He mentions that Drew said he felt a constant unease, like he was being watched. The journalist / newsman / notary felt the same, and the two agree it is strange to say the least that Zack was killed right after he showed his face to the world. He also reveals that he was a friend of the Grammary's before Thalas's disappearance, to the point that he interviewed Zack just after the affair. He doesn't know exactly what happened to Thalassa, but he knows that Valance in trouble thanks to that pink envelope, revealing that it isn't the first time he's lost to Zack. Both Zack and Valent were interested in Thalassa, and of course, she chose Zack. However, Thalassa had another husband before Zack, one whose name we won't learn in this game and who died while performing, and one with whom Thalassa had a second child. Even Brushel doesn't know where that one went, but he does let Phoenix borrow a photo of Thalassa from years gone by, sporting a pair of beautiful bracelets. She, along with Trucy and Magnifi, all have the same power, and that power has to do with the Gramarye's eyes. Power that was given from Magnifi to Thalassa, and Thalassa to Trucy. I have to know more about this power of Trucy's. It's like she can see right into people's minds. The first time I saw her do it, it blew mine. And after you were done having your mind blown, you took her to play cards with you. Gotta use the resource at hand, I always say. Yet I myself have no such power. But Trucy does. Why is that? Maybe Trucy got her power from her mother. Thalassa Gramarye? I will not speak of that. Thalassa is officially missing, correct? And I think I know why you don't want to talk about her. Take that! The three of you were a team once. Not that the entire country doesn't already know this. At your peak, you were the biggest stars around. Yet, there's another story behind the fame, one that not many know. Thalassa lost her life during a rehearsal. To you and Valent Gramarye's bullets. It was an accident. It wasn't me! How could I shoot my dear Thalassa? I'm sure Valent would say the same thing. Why, just like another murder I might mention. Damn you! Her eyes, I loved Thalassa's eyes. To think they could read my mind was frightening. Yet there was a warmth in them that felt like an embrace. She is dead, and Magnifi Gramarye has joined her. So the only one with her power left now is Trucy? Mr. Zack. I do not know. I don't need any power to see through that one, buddy. So there's someone else. Someone other than Trucy. Someone who inherited Thalassa's power. Ha! Ha! How would I know? My chances are slim. It would take a miracle to learn the truth. Or maybe one has already occurred. There is someone else with the power, and I know who. Take that! This boy? His name is, I forget, something weird. Who could he be? An attorney. Attorney? I noticed him when I went to visit a friend's law offices. So, what are we to make of this, oh great ex-attorney? You can show me pictures of strange boys all you like. But you could at least say something like, I'm this boy. I could use a laugh. Perhaps you wouldn't laugh if you knew the facts. This might not be 100% proof, but it's close. There's a link between this boy and Thalassa. Actually, it's more of a ring. A ring. Perhaps this will refresh your memory? I just so happen to have evidence showing this missing link. Actually, I know something. Your marriage to Thalassa was her second. How did you know this? Her first husband, he died a year after they were wed, yes? He was a performer. They met when he joined us Gramarye's as a guest in our show. After Thalassa wed him, she left the troupe for a while. And you say she had a child then? I have a photograph of her here. I couldn't help notice what she was wearing when I first saw this. Those bracelets stand out. They are a Gramarye family heirloom. This boy wears a bracelet just like the ones in the picture. What? So, that's why? Why what, Mr. Zack? I took this photograph of Thalassa before she left us. When she returned, she wore only one bracelet. I bet I know where that other one went. She gave it to this boy. Her son. The Gramarye's power is actually explained with a form of pseudoscience. The game mentions kinetic vision as the ability to perceive anything with full clarity when focusing, and that's how Apollo and Trucy have been able to pick up on witnesses' tells. Apollo's bracelet is temperature sensitive, and effectively squeezes his wrists whenever he tenses up. In turn, whenever Apollo's grammarific eyes see a witness's tension, he subconsciously becomes tense himself, and his bracelet therefore tells him when to focus. Apollo's power isn't one that needs to be explained in a world where Phoenix's magical Magatama and spirit mediums exist, but I think it's a pretty cool thing to describe nonetheless. As for the reveal that Apollo and Trucy are half-siblings, I don't mind it per se, but it has much more shock value than relevance. Trust me, there are other much more impactful twists for Apollo later on in the series. Phoenix never tells the two of them about their relationship, which is such a letdown that fans have used it as evidence that each game from this point on is purposefully spoiler-free. While there is no official statement from Capcom concerning this, and there are instances in later games that mention important plot aspects of previous ones, such as Phoenix's disbarment arc finishing up before Dual Destinies begins, each game in this trilogy is much more independent than the others, largely due, in my opinion, to a lack of recurring characters. For reference, Clavier shows up in one Dual Destinies case, and Apollo and Trucy are the only others from this game that appear at all, and their time as lawyer and assistant are cut far shorter, especially in Trucy's case. More than that, a point many people have made about this case, and this game in general, is that it's not really Apollo's. This is the longest segment of the game, with the bulk of the game's mysteries being solved, and Apollo doesn't take part of it, and is only mentioned as part of a largely irrelevant and arguably unnecessary plot twist. The game as a whole has revolved around Phoenix almost as much as Apollo, perhaps even more. Phoenix was the defendant and did a lot to take down Kristoff in the first case, his relationship with Emma and history with Clavier are explored in the second, and now he's been the player character for the majority of the finale. While I personally don't mind playing as Phoenix, I definitely understand people's grievances towards Apollo getting shafted, and I think it's a missed opportunity to have Apollo take the reins. The case is called Turnabout Succession after all, but it feels more like Phoenix is clutching the torch as hard as he can, rather than passing it on to Apollo. To be fair, the developers were supposedly given a directive to include Phoenix in the game somehow, and they certainly involved him in a way that makes sense. This case is greatly complicated, to the point that it arguably requires that someone as experienced as Phoenix to crack. Phoenix is shown throughout the game to be smarter than he lets on despite his new design and lack of badge, and the game telegraphs his involvement well, giving the player just enough information to warrant intrigue about Phoenix's history. That's a huge part of why Turnabout Trump is so well loved, and that intrigue is cashed into great success here. It's just a shame that Apollo Justice arguably isn't even the star of his debut game's finale. Zack recounts his final conversation with Magnify, and the two discuss Valant. Phoenix explains that Valant's innocence has come into question in the eyes of the public, and Zack is moved by this. Despite being framed for murder, he retains compassion for his former partner, and signs a false confession to the murder of Magnify. Phoenix knows just what to do, to finally solve the mystery of Magnify's magical murder. Ask what you will, you'll get nothing from me. I'm as much a part of this after as you are now. I have to know what happened. For 7 long years, I have endured. Now, finally, the curtain lifts on my new golden age. All the miracles of all troop within my grasp. Sorry to do this, Valant. But right now, I need answers. I think I'll start by dropping a bomb. That should shake things up. Valant, I wouldn't be so sure about those miracles. Not as long as I have this. Take that! And what might that be? I see it bears the Gramarye seal. I should have brought this to your attention sooner. But I didn't imagine you'd be planning your comeback quite so fast. What is this? A document showing the true recipient of the performance rights to Magnify's miracles. What? Zack, Gramarye, he wrote this? What? He passed everything to his daughter? Trucy Enigmar. Actually, she's officially my daughter these days. Preposterous! Zack is gone! Vanished into the void! This is the genuine article. Zack was alive when he wrote this. Both myself and the notary can testify to this. Why? Why does fate toy with me so? Why must my life be lived in thrall to the dead? You're not the only one with that problem. But he shot Magnify! Yes, it was Zack! It was! And then he left, and my career as a magician fell into darkness. Did you think there might be some way out of it? Say, if you could prove Zack Gramarye shot Magnify. Was that why you testified? Yes, my way out! It should have been my way out! Well, it might not be too late, Mr. Valant. All you need is a way to prove your case. Who really killed Magnifi Gramarye? I believe I have the answer to your prayers right here. Zach Gramarye wrote one more thing before passing on. This is the confession! In which he admits to the killing of Magnifi Gramarye. See? All according to your plan. I am a magician by trade. Deception is my life's work. I fool the audience, give them a fleeting dream. Yet, it seems the table has turned. Now I am the audience, believing in the deceptions I have brought upon myself. Zach wrote this right in front of me. After I explained your situation to him. Alika, oh my god! Valent finally admits that Zach wasn't the murderer. He also admits that, in a flash of passion, he wanted to kill Magnifi for the rights to his magic. But, he says, he didn't. He claims, in fact, that Magnifi was shot by Magnifi Gramarye himself. When Valent had entered the room, Zach had already won his performance rights, and Magnifi informed him of Zach's victory before committing suicide. That's when Valent decided to frame Zach for the crime. He agrees to turn himself in, and reminisces over the fact that Zach was alive, as well as her. This is one of my favorite scenes in the entire game, simply because it's never made 100% clear what happened in that hospital room. As Valent asks, can he truly be believed? It sounds like he's coming clean to Phoenix, but there's a delicious ambiguity in his confession. It's a small thing, and it doesn't matter either way, really, but that's why it's good. I'll say it again, this case and this game generate intrigue beautifully. With everything else solved, it's time to return to Kristoff's prison cell. But, Phoenix doesn't find himself able to open the black psyche locks. In fact, he doesn't find Kristoff at all. What he does find is the yellow envelope. The yellow envelope. The sender's Drew Misham. Finally, decisive evidence. He pulls out a bottle of atrocrodine spray, and the Gramarye stamp gets a solid reaction. He opens the envelope, sent from the pleading Drew Misham, and... What's this? A burglar in jail? Gavin. I didn't know you moonlighted in larceny, right? Gavin, there's something I have to ask you. Can I steal your stuff? The answer is no. My apologies, but there's not much I care to discuss. Vera Misham hasn't received her verdict yet. You follow me, Gavin? There are no known survivors of atrocrodine poisoning, but it never hurts to hope. Okay, I'll be leaving now then. Right, wait. Yeah, Gavin? Would you mind leaving that letter? It's private. Oh, sorry. Forgot I had it. Many thanks. Oh, I love every bit of dialogue between these two. Fortunately for Phoenix, the decal on his beanie is revealed to hide a video camera, recording everything he's learned over the past 7 years. I shall start with the obvious here. This entire investigation is one big plot hole. Several pieces of evidence from the present are used in the past. There's no denying this. There are some things Phoenix could have feasibly figured out in other ways, like Vera's nail polish being the good luck charm Kristoff gave her, or that Trucy was involved in the magic trick to let Zach escape. However, Phoenix is only made aware of, say, Thalassa's first husband through a conversation with Brushnell that happened 6 months after Zach dies. And he certainly would have had no knowledge that she wears the same bracelets as Apollo's. Maybe he'd done some digging in the years between the Gramarye trial and the current case, and this game was set up for the efficiency presenting his knowledge rather than an accurate view of how exactly he learned all that he did. I'm honestly not sure how to feel about such an assessment, and I could go either way on how valid I think that idea is, but at face value, it's just a little discombobulated. That discombobulation in terms of the story is great for gameplay, however. While the game does telegraph most of the places the player must go and what they must present, as is the case in much of Ace Attorney's investigation sequences, you're meant to figure out the big picture on your own, and overall the Mason system feels more free even if the path to the truth is rather linear. In particular, the potential to get lost in any given set of psyche locks forces players to consider whether they have what they need or should backtrack and find evidence elsewhere. Personally, I think psyche locks are a much better gameplay mechanic than the bracelet, as you're effectively thrust into a mini cross that you might not even be able to complete. The player is given the opportunity to explore in an adventure game. It's beautiful and elegant. The bracelet only shows up during trials in this game, and while it does get used during investigations in other games, the process is much simpler, often requiring only one piece of evidence to be presented, if at all. I do like the idea behind Apollo's bracelet, but I'll discuss that more during the next trial phase, I promise. On the topic of Apollo, I've mentioned that he's practically cast aside in the second half of this case. He was only mentioned by name once during the conversation with Zack, and the reveal of his power is almost certainly the least relevant in terms of actually solving either murder. It's bad enough that this case, and this game as a whole, are dominated by the past of Phoenix Wright, but even in their attempts to make Apollo relevant in passing, his plot twists might not even crack the top 5 of this case. Granted, that is largely due to how impactful the other twists are, and the half-sibling deal and explanation of the bracelet's functions are great in a vacuum. He simply gets overshadowed by everything else that's happened for the past 7 years. Alright, I believe that covers everything I've wanted to say about this portion of the game. It's been an incredibly long road to the truth, 37 paragraphs in fact, but you, the player, Phoenix, and Apollo have all the facts they need to put this case away once and for all. The final trial is about to begin, and the courtroom doors are opening.